Check, check, check. Sup, my name is Cho Hui Guo, but you guys can call me Acre. I'm from New York City. Thank you, Ribbon Farm Refactor Camp, for having me. I'm super excited to be in LA. My talk is going to be about PermaPunk, and let's go back a little bit. PermaPunk, visionary nonfictions, what it is, why it's useful, and where I hope it can go. So, first, just a little bit about me. I'm a professional civil mechanical engineer, a permaculturalist, community organizer, as well as I would say, an optimistic accelerationist. I'm here very grateful to my group back home, Biosphere X. Shout out Biosphere X. What we do is we are a think tank. We research what we say is permanent cultures. And most of the images that you will see are gleaned from our Instagram account. And so also an apology if most of what I'm about to say is going to be familiar to y'all. Who here knows about Cyberpunk? Just heard of it? Dresses, listens to music. Yeah, okay. Plays games. Who here knows about permaculture? Anyone? Yeah, we got some? All right, so I'm talking to y'all. I'm sorry if this is going to be very basic, but I'm very glad I went on the walking tour because I realized that hopefully this can be relevant to a lot of people. And so 15 minutes, we're going to try to synthesize a little bit of these two passions of mine. So Cyberpunk is cool, I would argue. It's kind of become like a sub-layer within my life. This is the LA skyline in 2019, according to Sid Mead. He designed most of the feel of Blade Runner. And I mean, I don't think he was that far off. It's real sunny today. And but you know, we look at this and I'll say I get it. You know, I get where he's trying to go. They felt what we're feeling today, which is things are kind of bleak. So I began to question my love of cyberpunk, my total ingratiation into this aesthetic when I was exposed to this book called Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. Who here has maybe read the book? Okay, so respect. I grew up in cities all my life, and when I read this book, I had thought that the progression of humans from rural to urban was an inevitability, and that's just the linear progress of society. Whereas this book, one of the main themes is that we are not humanity. And with that, it wasn't a nihilistic or a misanthropic quote. It's really just trying to reframe and give the reader another perspective about where we're situated within this great dance of life. So what I thought of as total and, you know, like very much a given that human beings will keep progressing in our technology and in our social systems, I realized that was actually what in the book is called mother culture, but we're going to get to a few other names of this worldview. That was what was controlling me and guiding my choices in life. So keep in mind, you know, I will preface this talk with saying, like, all of these experiences are also just my group's, and totally respect everyone else's choices in their life because there are a lot of ways to live. So the one question that I wanted to start to ponder is, like, if cyberpunk is a type of speculative fiction, we walk around Santa Monica and we're saying, what's it going to be like in 10 years? And we kind of start from where we are now, and we kind of go to A to B to C, and then all of a sudden you have humans uploading their minds into the computer and everyone's eating Soylent and stuff like that, versus a visionary fiction, right? So we want to see where we want to be, and then how do we get there? And then furthermore, a visionary nonfiction. So let's like live it, because it's actually fun and it's rewarding, and maybe there are things within the practice of enacting our dreams that can cure some of the ailments of what is known, like in the book Ishmael, mother culture, or, you know, another way we say it is the Matrix, right? I was on the plane ride here, the Matrix was happened to be playing. I got to relive a little bit of my teenage years, watched it, and I was like blown away by how captivating it still is. So the language of the Matrix is still quite pervasive in my peer circle, so maybe we can use the words and like kind of break it down, right? So like, how do we break out of the Matrix? How do we wake up? And you know, if you believe Elon Musk that like, you know, we're a simulation, then that's another conversation. But today, the Matrix that we live in, you know, it's like the air we breathe, right? We assume things are a certain way, so that it keeps us telling these narratives that are very compelling. I mean, I played a lot of video games in the past, and I'm like, dude, I want robot arms, you know what I mean? But there is a code that we can recognize within this world that we live in, and maybe we can use the master's tools to dismantle the house. Some people say it's not possible, but we'll see, right? Because what is actually the Matrix? So one of our members in Biosphere X, she works for a consulting firm for insurance companies, so that is, let me tell you, climate change is the best job security right now, right? So she goes around the country. She couldn't be here today, but she's right now in Texas looking at disaster zones, trying to see the damage. And at night, you know, the Sid meets LA looks sick, right? But in the daytime, when you're on the ground in this dystopic future or dystopic present, you know, it looks like trees blown over, like these are gonna be all deadwood. You know, it looks like people's houses, you know, defaulting, and you see signs like looters will be killed. It's kind of a brutal present right now in these places, because we're all becoming more desensitized to what's happening. And I mean, we're telling a compelling story to ourselves. So right here, I'm gonna get into it. This is Liz. She works for, by day she works for consulting for insurance companies, but on the other days, this is one of our first projects, that small-scale land project we did in Queens, New York. Made a little food forest using very actionable design principles from what is known as permaculture. And permaculture is a shorthand for permanent agriculture, and for us, we're more interested in permanent culture. So what does it mean to design for, you know, similar to organizations like the Long Now? Like, what does it mean to look real far into the future and see how do we get there, right? And it's a world that personally I want to live in. And so this small, you know, it was like 1/15 of an acre. After we implemented a very simple swale system, we've never had to water it for like the past 7 years. And it's continually been very productive. And the problem now actually is the overabundance. So it's just too far for us to go and just get the food. So right now it's actually leads us to another interesting phenomenon, which is human beings are actually supposed to be active parts in the ecology of our biosphere. And what this leads us to try to push back on, like, the meta narrative right now is that, like, we are inherently flawed, and we deserve to be separated from the outside world. So, you know, the cyberpunk Deus Ex Machinas of the world, like, you don't see many houseplants, you know, a lot in it, even outside, right? Like, it's mostly metal and concrete. I mean, as an engineer, I get the aesthetic, but we have to push a message that actually human beings have the right to be in these spaces just as much as all the other complex actors that are enabling it to create this abundance. So, I mean, this is just real quick. Permaculture primer. There's 12 principles of it. I'm not going to go into all 12 of them, but basically it's focused on ecological and financial surpluses, right? Very interestingly enough, it is acknowledging that we live in a human constructed world. So, like, you're going to have to think about finances, right? But there's an emphasis on long-term thinking as well as an equitable distribution of resources. And you know, this is a lightning talk, so I'm not going to go into that, but just know that permaculture has been practiced around the world, and it's basically a design science that is trying to solve both technological and social issues. So what is it not? It's not conservation. We're not trying to create Central Park in New York City, right? We're actively involved in our ecology. We're actively shaping the landscape to accelerate natural processes. This is just a beginning shot of another small land project we have upstate New York, 5 acres. This is a larger swale system. Is the beginning of a nut forest that we're planting. This nut forest is, it's a ton of work up front, but we're lazy. We don't want to work and provide food for ourselves. We want the landscape to regenerate itself so that we can just go and eat a buffet of nuts. If anyone's keto here, like, hit me up. You know what I mean? It's not environmentalism. We're not interested in making things stay the same, because we understand that that's not actually what happens in ecology. Things progress and go through stages. So again, we're actively trying to play a role in the transformation of our landscapes that we've always done, maybe for the worst up to this point, 2019. But going forward, we want people to know that, like, human beings can actually make landscapes more abundant. So we're gonna shift the narrative to say, like, what does it mean to live in a world of abundance instead of scarcity? Because in a world of scarcity, you have signs like looters are gonna be shot, and we don't call the police here. We take care of it ourselves, right? So, and lastly, just straight up, permaculture is not new, right? It was coined in Australia back in the day, but we're pretty sure that there were a lot of peoples who I don't know the names of that just practiced it. And there are other factors involved, but permaculture is just a name that our system has given it, which is useful to talk about. So weeds. Mark Shepard is one of the more bigger names within permaculture, and I like this quote from him: "If you design for anything less than paradise, guess what? That's what you'll get." Right? So Mark Shepard has a huge kind of hands-off permaculture farm in the US, and what he does is he teaches people this knowledge, right? And one of the main things that I got from him was framing in how you approach a systems design. So weeds, we all know what the lawn should look like. The platonic ideal of the lawn, I think, is something we all can share as Westerners and as people who live in the city. And we all kind of know what a weed looks like, right? But Mark Shepard, he argues that obviously weeds are a construct, right? What makes one plant desirable and one not, right? And go further, weeds are a resource. Weeds actually provide a very beneficial service. And lastly, I would say they're actually pioneer species, and they can be pioneer species toward paradise. Again, loaded. We can talk later about what that actually means. So Geoff Lawton, one of the OGs in Australia doing this work, he had a great video on YouTube. They're really trying to spread the message. They're talking about, I watched it. I'm always trying to update my knowledge on how to be a better botanist and landscaper. So I had a neighbor. This is just a real world example of coming up against challenges and then using the design as well as the meta of this knowledge to kind of help build better environments for us all, right? My neighbor, they kind of know me and my housemate, Biosphere X members in our house, as the farming guys, because we have a lot of tomato plants. They're like, hey, what do you think about this Roundup or this other brand? Because I'm trying, you guys must know how to get rid of the weeds. You guys have so much food in your front yard. And I could have obviously been like, don't do that. I don't want to get the endocrine disruptors in my blood or whatever. But I was like, hey, actually, let's go and say what are weeds, and we explained that weeds are actually the code for your soil. Let's decode your soil. So certain weeds will tell you information about if it's too compacted, if it's too loose, if it's low in phosphorus, low in nitrogen. And guess what? It kind of opened this broader conversation with just my neighbors. This is a very small thing, but I wanted to let y'all know that this is a possibility when we apply just the weeds to just generally how we look at problems in our society. Because I'm not saying permaculture is the answer, the end all be all, But we operate in very challenging environments with like bureaucratic gridlock, income inequality. We have a lot of waste, and real quick, another I think kind of cyberpunk thing is like allergies, right? So I was always like wondering, like real quick, I was just always wondering why I got allergies. I thought it was just because we were just getting less and less healthy, but actually it's because cities are choosing to plant only male trees these days because they don't want fruit to soil the sidewalks. So I mean, and now we have Tulsa, Oklahoma has like the sun blocked out by the pollen from all these male trees. It was this is a I'm sorry. Thomas Ogren, he wrote a paper on this. Shout out Thomas. And botanical sexism, right? But this is a project that we did with Radical Gardeners, another awesome organization in New York. We're grafting fruiting bodies onto the trees. So if there's pollen, at least we get some food out of it, right? Instead of just sneezing all the time. So not a lot of time to really go deeper into stuff, but like just want to tell you guys, it might be a too hopeful message, but like humans, we obviously have to be aware of our scales. Like once things get too big, too many people, like then other things become more relevant. But human beings are meant to participate in our ecologies. We're meant to make things better or worse. We didn't get to talk about seasonal hierarchies, violence or stability, human earthworm colonies, Dunbar numbers. So I want to talk to y'all about it. And lastly, the PermaPunk is not punk as in the Ubermensch of like cyberpunk. It's like punk as in band. So like it's all about people organizing together, small groups of people organized together. There's nothing new, but there's definitely power in small numbers. So thank you guys for having me, and looking forward to talking with you. Cheers. Please.
Thank you, Acre, Jesse, and Brian. We are running about 16 minutes late. I know you may have questions, so I would suggest, in the interest of people that may have to leave immediately for the airport, we move on to Tiago's talk.